Hello everyone. In our last video, we did a brief introduction of Wordsworth's preface to the lyrical ballads. Today, we will take up one of the most important topic, that is the themes of poetry as discussed by Wordsworth in his preface to the lyrical ballads. In the preface to lyrical ballads, Wordsworth discusses in detail the subject of poetry. He observes that poets do not write for poets alone but for men. This implies that the poets cannot succeed by employing tricks. They can fulfill their function only when they descend from their supposed heights. The poet writes for men as much as for himself, and as such, the basic theme of poetry must be human life. He is to write on man, on nature, and on human life. Then alone can his poems give rise to pleasure. So, he says that he chose humble and rustic life for the subject of his poetry. He declared that his duty was to trace the primary laws of our nature, and he further gave various reasons for choosing rustic and humble people for his poems. The main reasons which he gives are that he gives the reason that the essential passions of the human heart find a better soil in which they can attain their maturity, are less under restraint, and speak in a plainer and more emphatic language. Wordsworth felt that contact with nature made man morally sound and spiritually rich. To be divorced from nature is to become degraded. Secondly, he says that the essential passions of the human heart exist in a state of greater simplicity in the humble and rustic conditions as compared to the sophisticated city life. The elementary human feelings are more accurately contemplated and more forcefully communicated in humble and rustic conditions of life. Wordsworth preferred low and rustic life for the purpose of poetry because in that condition of life the essential passions and elementary feelings of men existed in a condition of freer association. They are not subject to repressions. The third reason he gives is that in rustic life human passions are associated with beautiful and permanent forms of nature, and as such are nobler and lasting as compared to the passions of men belonging to the sophisticated societies. Without this inexhaustible source of objective beauty in the conditions of life, no beauty of language or thought can develop. Therefore, Wordsworth has used language and situations from low and rustic life because in low and rustic life men are more simple, more direct, nearer to his own elemental passions, and less affected and artificial in the way he expresses his passions. Fourthly, he says that in constant company of nature, man lives a pure and elemental life. Man is at his best when he lives a life of primal simplicity in constant communion with nature. The feelings and thoughts found in peasants and children are materials for poetry because they are common to all mankind. In these rustic characters, the elements are simple. They belong to human nature in general and not to the specific manners, and hence they will always exist. Most of Wordsworth's poems deal with the lives of common, humble village folks. He is inspired by the slightest beauties of nature. His emotions are responsive to even such objects as a rainbow, a daffodil, and such simple person as a solitary reaper. He was drawn to this side of humanity when he himself noticed the horrors of the French Revolution. He was born and brought up in the countryside. At the university also, he found that genius and industry carry their own reward more than rank and wealth. Wordsworth was the first English poet who threw around the lives of ordinary men the glory and sweetness of a song. He was the first who poured around the dalesmen's cottages and the wandering life of the peddler. He dealt with the unearned struggle of country and the mountain folk. So, to conclude, we can say that Wordsworth justifies his stand on the themes of